Hi everyone. In this video, I would like to talk about nutrition as one vital pillar in Alzheimer's prevention. My name is Raluca and I'm on a mission to create awareness that Alzheimer's disease can be considered a preventable disease provided that we intervene with certain essential lifestyle factors. One of these lifestyle factors is nutrition. And thanks to neuroscientists like Dr. Lisa Mosconi, we now know the types of foods which are very damaging to our brains and also the type of foods and macronutrients which are very nourishing to our brains. In this video, I would like to talk about the foods which we should be excluding from our diets in order to diminish as much as possible our risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. In essence, these foods and macronutrients fall under four main categories. The first one is sugar and bad carbs, the second one is processed foods, the third one, saturated and trans fats, and the fourth one, foods which are contaminated with heavy metals, with toxins, with herbicides, which have been actually very suggestively called by Dr. Dale Bretson, a pioneer doctor in the integrative treatment of Alzheimer's, dementogens, because they increase the risk of getting dementia. I suggest we take them one by one. Sugar and bad carbs. In today's society, it is very challenging to talk about sugar. We all know that it's a legal drug, that it's addictive, and that we should have quit sugar or at least diminish the amount of sugar that we consume like yesterday. And still, we are not doing it. Why? Of course, because it's addictive, but also because sugar is really a social phenomenon. It is intrinsically linked to our limbic system. We celebrate with cake, we express affection with cake, we eat something sweet or chocolate when we feel sad or when we are bored or when we are happy. I quit sugar about 5 years ago, and it was honestly one of the best decisions in my life. But what I've learned is that we need a very strong why. And I'm really hoping that knowing that the regular consumption of sugar, which can only be excessive in today's world, may result in insulin resistance, and insulin resistance is a major risk factor for Alzheimer's, may serve as the right motivation to you. In the sugar category, we're not only including white or brown sugar, but also very concentrated carbs which have this capacity of very rapidly and significantly increasing our blood sugar levels, such as glucose syrup, corn sweetener, molasses, maltodextrin, but also certain healthy sweeteners like agave syrup or coconut sugar, and of course also white flour, white rice, and all the products that are made with these types of sugar like bread and pasta and cake and pastries, basically all the yummy things in the world. Insulin resistance is very, very toxic to the brain for four main reasons. The first one is that insulin resistance impairs the ability of glucose to be transported and utilized by brain cells. Secondly, it impairs cognitive function. Thirdly, it increases the accumulation of the beta amyloid protein, which, as we know, is the hallmark of Alzheimer's disease. Why? Because it leads to a process called insulinemia. Basically, there is too much insulin produced by the pancreas, and this is highly inflammatory. And as we know, the beta amyloid is secreted as part of the inflammatory response. And fourthly, it leads to the production of the very toxic and inflammatory AGEs, advanced glycation end products. There are many studies, observational studies, that have showed the link between insulin resistance, type 2 diabetes, and Alzheimer's, and this is why Alzheimer's has come to be called type 3 diabetes. I would like to very briefly quote the Hisayama study, which was started in Japan in Hisayama in 1961. It involved more than 1,000 participants, all in their 60s and dementia-free. And what was noted over a period of more than 20 years was that the subjects that developed type 2 diabetes were 1.8 more likely to also develop Alzheimer's disease. And I believe this in itself is very, very telling. Moving on to the second category, processed foods. Processed foods are really a health hazard and, in my opinion, should be prohibited. I know it sounds a bit drastic, but Dr. Lisa Mosconi, a neuroscientist specialized in Alzheimer's prevention with a focus on women, is actually saying that if she was to single out a single food item that is particularly dangerous to the brain and increases our risk of developing Alzheimer's disease, she would probably name processed foods. Processed foods have the highest content of trans fats. They are very rich in refined flour, refined oils, refined sugar. They contain all sorts of chemicals, food additives, taste enhancers, colorings, anti-foaming agents, and emulsifiers. Emulsifiers are particularly dangerous to the microbiome because they increase the permeability of the gut lining, which allows more dangerous toxins to be leaked into the bloodstream. And unfortunately, emulsifiers are very, very common. They can be found in salad sauce, in certain healthy vegetable milks, in ice cream. Xanthan gum is an example. Guar gum is another example. Processed foods really need to be out of our diet, but just like sugar, they are everywhere, and sometimes we just feel like if everyone is having processed food, maybe it's not that bad, but it actually is. It is addictive, and we really need to let it go. The third category, saturated and trans fats, and I like to call the saturated fat the bad and the trans fat the worst. When it comes to saturated fat, we had studies that showed it is a significant risk factor for cardiovascular disease, for stroke, for obesity, for type 2 diabetes. Now we have recent studies that show that the consumption of more than 13 grams of saturated fat on a regular basis also increases the risk of getting Alzheimer's disease. And when it comes to trans fats, things are even more drastic. There is no moderation when you talk about trans fats. Lisa Mosconi, in her wonderful book Brain Food, is actually pointing out the studies that show that the consumption of more than even 2 grams of trans fats on a regular basis is a risk factor for Alzheimer's disease. And this is why Nordic countries like Finland, like Norway, other countries like Austria or Switzerland have actually banned trans foods altogether, which I believe is a very, very welcome measure that should be adopted by all states. Moving on to the final category, foods contaminated with heavy metals and toxins and herbicides. And first of all, what I would like to clarify is that methyl mercury, which is found in large predator fish like tuna, shark, blue tilefish, marlin, king mackerel, methyl mercury is particularly dangerous to the brain as it has been linked to a very severe form of Alzheimer's with a very accelerated progression rate and also characterized by very frequent hallucinations and aggressiveness, tantrum episodes of the patients. This form of Alzheimer's, I have experienced it firsthand with my wonderful mother. It is brutal on the patient, but also extremely challenging for the caretaker. And again, it has been linked to a contamination with methyl mercury. It's not just about heavy metals, it's also about the herbicides and the pesticides which may contaminate fruits and vegetables. And this is why I believe that the efforts of the Environmental Working Group are so important. The Environmental Working Group is publishing annually a list of fruit and vegetables called the Clean 15, basically the types of fruits and vegetables which are less susceptible to contamination with herbicides and which can be bought non-organic. And I believe on the top of my mind, this list includes asparagus, carrots, eggplant, sweet corn, sweet potatoes, watermelon, cantaloupe, carrots. On the other hand, there is also a list called the Dirty Dozen, 12 fruits and vegetables which are very susceptible to contamination, such as blueberries, which are considered so healthy, strawberries, spinach, kale, collard greens, apple, pears, nectarines, peaches, cherries, very, very common types of fruits, which again are very likely to be contaminated with herbicides, and it's so important to buy them organic. When it comes to herbicides, a special mention needs to be made in relation to glyphosate. Glyphosate is a very, very dangerous herbicide which has been linked to Alzheimer's disease, and also BPA, bisphenol. BPA has been linked not only to Alzheimer's but to certain forms of hormone-dependent cancers such as breast cancer and prostate cancer, and is found in canned products, in dental materials, in healthcare equipment, and even in toys for children. And we are exposed to toxins in our homes, for example, mold in very humid climates. Mold is another risk factor for Alzheimer's. The water that we drink may contain all sorts of chemicals. The air that we breathe is polluted. Pharmaceuticals can be contaminated with arsenic and lead and cadmium, which is unbelievable. Non-organic meat comes from animals which are usually injected with antibiotics and raised with growth hormones. But the solution is not just to simply run and hide on top of the mountain. We are living in a modern society, in a society where we benefit from technology, and there is so much we can do in order to avoid this sort of toxins and chemicals. Not only eating, for example, fish from the SMASH group. SMASH comes from salmon, mackerel, nut king, anchovies, sardines, and herring, the SMASH group. But also, we can buy organic meat whenever possible. We can try to buy fruits and vegetables which are organic, especially if they are susceptible to contamination. We can filter the water, use an air filter. We are not powerless in this attempt to exclude demantogens from our life. I'm sometimes wondering if living in such a high technology society involves a certain price that we need to pay, but I simply cannot accept that an increased risk of diseases like Alzheimer's represents such a price. We need to use technology in our favor and find ways to prevent this terrifying disease, which is Alzheimer's disease. I'll see you in the next video. Have a great day, everyone. Bye.